Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of Vool, and in this video we're talking about the best ways for you to learn Blender. So let's deal with the elephant in the room, and that is that this is a pretty clickbaity title, but I really do stand by everything that I'm going to say in this video. I've been learning Blender for about a decade now, and I really do think that this is the best way for you to learn Blender, or some of the common pitfalls for you to avoid. Now obviously people are going to disagree with that. If you do, feel free to say so in the comments section. As long as it's constructive and you suggest something else or why this doesn't work or what worked for you, I'm really happy for that to happen. It means that people can read through the comments section and get different ideas and find something that's going to work specifically for them. But as I said, I do think that this is the best way for most people to learn Blender, so let's get on with this. So for my first tip, which I think is the most important, is stop just watching videos on YouTube. And I know that sounds like a bit of an odd one for a person that makes videos on YouTube to be saying, but this is not useful if you just do it by itself. I know that rote learning, while it's not exciting, is one of the best ways to learn. It's why you get sat reciting times tables or phonics when you're learning. And it's why actually what Phoebe did in Friends is actually the right thing to do, even though it's put forward in a really stupid way.
Oh, no, you don't touch the guitar. No. First you learn here, then you learn here. This is bear claw.
But that rote learning works from repeating the exercise, calling out those timetables numbers. Just watching things doesn't do that. So yes, do watch those basic videos on Blender so you master things like navigation and you don't look at Blender as this really intimidating program when you first open it, but that by itself is not going to be enough. You need to get in and start doing things with Blender. With that in mind, I'm putting out a Blender Basics series. The first one's going to be out a little bit later today for you to be able to watch through, and it covers everything that I think you need to know to get started with Blender, as well as giving some common errors that often crop up and people get frustrated with when they begin. So the idea is that you can watch the basic bits at the beginning of each of those videos, and if any problems do come up, you can watch the second half of the video or feel free to watch it all in one go. So what should the next stage be after you've watched those introduction to Blender style videos? Well, you need to get modeling. That's the most important thing. And one of the best ways to do that, or an optional way of doing that, is to start copying other videos. There's loads of them on YouTube. I've got a few myself, including making a series of wargaming bases, but there's also ones like the classic Make a Donut. Now, the important thing here, and something you need to recognize, is Blender is such a massive program that this isn't always going to be the best thing for you. It does give a really nice sense of achievement, which is a great way to start learning anything because you feel like you can do it. And if you need that, you need those little endorphin rush or dopamine rush or whatever it is that you get from success, then feel free to start out with that. But I would say try to find something that suits your purpose. If you're interested in doing CG work or graphics, the Donut tutorial is fantastic for you because it covers that rendering process. I'll put a link to that in the description because that's not something that I've made. Likewise, there's a load of great videos from a creator called Grant Abbott, who I would say is probably one of the best, if not the best, YouTube creators for Blender that's out there. Unfortunately, he doesn't make as many videos as he used to, but he has loads of different walkthrough videos if you're interested in things like graphics or animation, and that's what he seems to focus on. But I will say, even if that's not what you're interested in, a lot of his technique videos are really focused, and they're what I learnt the majority of my stuff for, and I focus on Blender for 3D printing, so an entirely different side to Blender. Now this for me is the most important point for learning Blender. Decide on a project, something you want to create, and start working on that. Now, don't delay it, don't try and do other things, start working on it now. So now that you've decided upon your project, and I would suggest don't make it the hardest project going. This was my first project in Blender, and it was a really big mistake, I would say, because it was just far too complex. But I broke it down into lots of different parts, like the chest, the arms, and the head, and actually through this I learnt a massive amount. It just took me a huge amount of time to get this finished because I was learning along the way. So I'd suggest something smaller and more achievable, but what you go for is entirely up to you. The important bit is you need to find a community that's going to help support you finding those tutorials, and that's probably the hardest part. Just as an example of that, Blender can do some very powerful things very quickly. For example, this instance where I'm changing one shape into another, and that is very easy to do in Blender, as you can see, but unless you know that this term is called lofting, you don't know really what to search for, and even when you know that this is called lofting, Blender has another term for it because it's involved in one of their other functions. So it's really important to find communities that are going to support you in finding what you need to do. So find a community that's going to help find those different functions, be it on YouTube, somewhere like Reddit, Blender's own forums, or it could be that you join something that's paid for, where you'll often get a lot of really good advice. For example, I've got a Patreon page where there's a Discord attached to that, which means that I can give you a lot of feedback and see that really quickly and tell you where to look in videos that I've produced in the past. I also want to give a shout out to Lord of Hyphens, who on the Artisans of Vaul Discord is really quick at getting back to people with some advice and suggestions as well. Other than that, I'll always try to reply to any comments on my videos because, again, that's how you're going to find the right video for you. But there are loads of other communities as well. As mentioned, Facebook is a good one, and that's what makes Blender such a great community. People are always happy to help. Another pair of creators that I just want to mention are Blender Bros. They both make YouTube videos and they have a website. I've not used any of their paid for content, but I really like their YouTube videos, though their language is a little bit more colourful if you've got children in mind. But I have also heard great things about their paid for content. And in a similar way to Patreon, they have an academy which you can join up to at certain points during the year, where they'll give you advice and help you with certain projects. And they generally focus on things like rendering and images. And then finally, when you're doing that and you're working on this project, now's the time to be randomly watching videos as you go, just in case you see something that you never thought of that might be a better way to approach it. But there's no point doing that until you're actually working on projects, and it might be that you see a video and go, oh, that was a great idea, and it's 2 months down the line after you solved the problem in a different way, but at least now you can apply that to a situation. My final thing that I'm going to include in this video is to not listen to what I would suggest is bad advice. And that's a very difficult thing to work out, what is bad advice and what isn't. I think one of the most classic ones is people that want to avoid using add-ons. Now, add-ons can be free or paid for, and what I'm not trying to do is sell you a product here. I don't make any add-ons myself. But I would say those free add-ons that make life easier for you in Blender, or the ones that are paid for that do something that's very difficult to do otherwise, should not be something you're afraid of. To use a metaphor, you don't learn how to make a car or how an engine works before you start driving a car. But add-ons are the same. You should be using them to make your life easier, and if you need to go into something and learn an aspect of that in more detail, which might be considered the basic bits of Blender, then do that at that point. But using an add-on like BoolTools, which is free and included in Blender and speeds up the process of doing booleans to being a fraction of the time of what it should be without it, is obviously something you should be using, and use it straight away. As soon as you can be using those add-ons, use them. It's going to make your life easier. And then if there's something specific they can't do, that's the point to go under the hood and start working out those basic processes. Now, I know that is probably the bit in the comment section which is going to get the most flack, and that's fine. If you disagree with that, feel free to say and why you do, but you're just making your life harder and you're taking longer to learn a program which already has got a lot to it. So why make life difficult for yourself? You're not getting anything from this by knowing how to construct a car as opposed to just getting in and learning to drive. So hopefully that's given you a few ideas of what to do and what to avoid. As I said, those Blender Basics videos are going to be coming out, with the first one out in a couple of hours. It might already be out by the time you're watching this, so if that's where you want to get started, go for it. Otherwise, the links to everyone that I've mentioned is in the description, including Grant Abbott, the Blender Bros team, as well as a link to my Patreon if that's something that interests you. Have a great day, guys.